Somewhere between 1 and 2 people in every 100 you will ever meet are psychopaths. When we think of psychopathy, we reach instinctively for the extreme case because the extreme case is safely far away. It happened to someone else in a place you'll never go at the hands of a man you'll never meet. But that is not true. This episode is about psychopaths who never needed to become murderers, about the parent, friend, and partner we all cherish, unaware of the atrocities they are capable of. And it is about what happens to the people who love them. Before this chapter can begin to explain how a psychopath behaves inside a relationship, it has to answer a more basic question first, one most documentaries on this subject skip entirely. Why does a psychopath bother to enter a relationship at all? If the popular picture is accurate and a psychopath truly feels nothing for the people around them, closeness should hold no real appeal. And yet psychopaths marry, they raise children, they keep friends for years, sometimes for decades. Something is drawing them toward other people. But what? Psychopaths are highly motivated by sex, money, and power. And social relations are the easiest routes to these rewards. Researchers studying primary psychopathy have found it linked to a pattern of using relationships instrumentally, pursuing multiple partners at once, poaching partners already committed to someone else, treating exclusivity as optional rather than expected. Relationships for them, in other words, are the means to get what they actually want. That's very much true, but that is the kind of truth we find at the first glance. And if you hold your gaze on them, you begin to see that there is more to their internal worlds than that truth can explain. Research into some of the most extreme cases suggests that profound emotional disturbance does not necessarily erase the desire for attachment. Beneath the apparent coldness, investigators have sometimes found intense loneliness and a persistent belief that they were incapable of being loved. They feel lonely and incapable of ordinary love. The problem then was not necessarily the absence of a need for closeness, but the absence of any expectation that ordinary intimacy could satisfy it. Why a psychopath enters your life is not a question central to this chapter. It is how a psychopath comes close to you. So, how does a psychopath come close to you? We are already familiar with the psychopath's excellence in matters of charm and seduction. Episode 2 was built entirely around that concept. A normal friendship or partnership builds slowly finding common ground and slowly becoming vulnerable to each other. A reliable sign of the psychopathic partner is that, like an envious bitch, he adopts the sweetness of a lifetime partner in days. The first move is often idealization. Idealizing a partner is treating a partner like a flawless fantasy figure instead of a real, normal human being with flaws. You feel noticed, not complimented in the generic way a stranger offers praise, but noticed with a precision that seems to prove real attention has been paid to who you actually are. That precision, however, isn't attention in the way you think it is. It has a name researchers have studied directly. The second move is mirroring, the rapid adaptation of one's behavior, interests, attitudes, and presentation to match those of another person. Someone entering a new relationship with psychopathic traits is unusually skilled at reading exactly what another person wants to see and becoming it quickly and without visible effort. The third move is excess, generosity, attention, and effort arriving far too early. The grand gesture comes in the first week. The intimacy that normally takes months to build appears almost immediately. Everything feels accelerated. This is roughly how the first few days or weeks with a psychopath look like, and somewhere in this time, his spell works. You fall for his charm. Now that the spell has worked and trust has been given, the mask can finally relax. But what fills the space of warmth is not cruelty, not yet. Do not expect a psychopath to murder in this phase. Wait instead for the smallest of psychopathic behaviors, visible only once you know how to look. In this phase, psychopathy often comes in small misbehaviors, interruptions, and boundary testing to see whether you will resist or surrender. This is Dr. Liane ten Brenke, a psychologist at the University of British Columbia, where she directs the Truth and Trust Lab. For nearly 2 decades, she has studied deception and dark personality in the courtroom, the boardroom, and the halls of government. Her research points to the same conclusion this chapter rests on. The danger was never only in the obvious cases, in the headlines, but very much at home. She believes people high in these traits engage in behavior that's very strategic, pushing people out very subtly. That single phrase does more work than a paragraph of my explanation could. It tells you the shape of what to look for, not an outburst or scene, but something quiet, visible only when you notice it. Consider something as ordinary as conversation. Does he interrupt you without hesitation, yet react sharply when you interrupt him? Does he cross a boundary you have already stated, then do it again, as though the first objection never happened? Psychopaths have a psychological habit of testing boundaries to see where the limits are. Tell them something is off limits, and watch how quickly they circle back to it anyway, to see whether the boundary actually holds or was only ever a suggestion. Each test costs them nothing to run, but each one that goes unchallenged tells them the door isn't locked at all, it just hasn't been pushed hard enough yet. This is how their real face is revealed, not in one dramatic unmasking, but through small misbehaviors that most of us never learn to name. There is no single moment where the truth announces itself. There is only an accumulation, quiet enough at every step to be forgiven, and only visible as a pattern once enough of it has passed to look back on. Don't fool yourself into thinking any of this happens in isolation, dear viewer. Every one of these small misbehaviors is a test, and no test exists on its own. Each one that goes unanswered clears the way for something bolder and darker than the one before it. What happens when the mask drops completely? The performance simply stops. There is no confrontation that forces it, no pressure that wears it down. It ends the way it began, a decision made without any of the weight a decision like that would carry for anyone else. A relationship to a psychopath is a supply line. It carries attention, sex, resources, or the simple stability of having somewhere to return to. The performance holds for exactly as long as the supply holds and stops the moment it doesn't. For you, their mask is the frame the entire relationship stands inside. For them, it is nothing of serious consequences, because nothing serious is attached to it. That is why they will be able to leave you with the coldness of a death angel. There is a naive misunderstanding that we often get to see in people about why a psychopath leaves a relationship. These people believe that the man leaving you is somehow different from the one arriving, that something changed in him or the real him finally showed up. This kind of thinking about a psychopath is completely wrong. The drop of the mask is not a break in their character. On the contrary, it is a simple continuation of it. The boundaries, tested in small ways earlier, were never separate from this moment. They were its early edges. This means that what you are watching at the end of the relationship is not a different person emerging. It is the same person you were with all along, just without a reason to hold anything back anymore. There is no formula for when this happens. Heartbreak, in the way it's usually described, moves through stages, each one taking roughly the time it takes. But nothing here follows a stage or a schedule. It ends exactly when it stops being useful, and that moment could arrive after a single evening or after several years, with no way of telling in advance which it will be. What decides the shape of the ending is simply what's still at stake for him. If nothing is, he disappears, and the disappearing itself carries no explanation because none was ever owed. If something is still at stake, he doesn't disappear. He turns and rewrites what happened. The relationship has already ended. There is no more courtesy, seduction, or charm left any longer. But you still find yourself clinging to it, the hope that he may return, and the fear that he may not. All the coquetry on his part, elevating you to the heavens and making you feel like the queen of his world, only to let you fall to the merciless ground. You may never desire to let go of the dead relationship, and in some rare case, even when you do, you will be exhausted to the core. Only after leaving this toxic relation do you realize how much you have lost to it.